Chapter 2078, Untitled. Chapter 2078, Untitled. The man in the black robe glanced at Ranmil. Do you mean it? Ranmil said. I've sold my soul to you. Otherwise you wouldn't have taught me fierce face, right? She raised her head and gritted her teeth. You can take my life at any moment. Am I wrong? The man stared at Ranmil and gave her a sympathetic look. He then shook his head and said, Remember what you said. He disappeared right after that. Ranmil was glad to see him leave. She sat on the ground and let out a breath of relief. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat. She was the only one who knew how terrifying that man was. Qingqiao woke up, rubbing the back of her head. Did I fall asleep? She knelt down and asked for Ranmil's forgiveness. Your Highness, I'm at fault. Ranmil waved her off. Qingqiao immediately rose to her feet and helped Ranmil stand up. All Ranmil could think of now was Jun Linyuan. She only had one last shot. If she failed, she would lose Jun Linyuan forever. After that, she would have to watch Jun Linyuan marry another woman, and couldn't do anything about it. At that thought, Ranmil clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. Princess, what's wrong? Qingqiao was worried when she saw Ranmil's dark face. Ranmil stared at Qingqiao, and the look reminded her of a serpent. Qingqiao's stomach lurched. Qingqiao, have I been kind to you? Ranmil suddenly grabbed Qingqiao's hands, and there was a frantic look in her eyes. Frightened, Qingqiao could only nod. Yes, of course. I've never harmed you, have I? No, of course not. Your Highness is the best princess. But she was scared. Then do something for me. Ranmil held Qingqiao's hands so tightly that blue veins popped on the back of her own hands. What thing? Qingqiao felt that something was wrong with her master. The madness in her eyes made it look like she was going to explode. Ranmil suddenly let go of Qingqiao and rose to her feet. It was her last chance. If she failed, her life would change forever. You need to think of a way to get Feng Wu to stay away from the crown prince for 5 minutes, said Ranmil. My happiness depends on it. Was it so serious? Qingqiao was nervous. They're leaving tomorrow, so today is my last chance. Go. Ranmil seemed to calm down, and gestured at Qingqiao to get on with the matter. Qingqiao wanted to say something, but when she saw the decisive look in Ranmil's eyes, she said, Yes, I'll do my best. There was a reason Qingqiao had been with Ranmil for so many years. Chapter 2079, Untitled. Chapter 2079, Untitled. Yes, Qingqiao was loyal, but she was also smart and friendly. When she came to a new place, it was very easy for her to get along with other people. As a matter of fact, ever since Ranmil entered the tombs, Qingqiao had been trying to make friends with Jun Linyuan's servants. She couldn't get close to Granny Gong, but Bei, who worked under Granny Gong, had become Qingqiao's friend. Therefore Qingqiao went to see her. Bei sighed and said, Qingqiao, Miss Feng Wu has been staying with His Royal Highness since they came back from the banquet. It's very hard to get her to come out. Qingqiao stuffed a stack of silver drafts in Bei's hands and smiled. It's really urgent. I won't take up too much of Miss Feng Wu's time. Please help me. After a pause she added, I'll owe you one, even if Miss Feng Wu won't see me. Bei sighed. Fine, I'll ask her for you. But don't blame me if she won't come out. Qingqiao smiled and said, Of course. Therefore when Bei brought Feng Wu some fruit, she walked up to her and said, Miss Wu, Qingqiao has been outside for a while. She wants to see you. Needless to say, Feng Wu was actually the crown prince. The crown prince glanced at Bei. Bei felt her stomach freeze. She stumbled back and regretted delivering the message. Had Feng Wu been around His Royal Highness for too long? Why was the look in her eyes as frightening as the crown prince's? Feng Wu was sitting next to Jun Linyuan, and she heard Bei as well, so she asked curiously, Who's Qingqiao? Huh? Bei looked at Feng Wu in confusion. His Royal Highness had always been cold and aloof. Why would he be interested in such a petty thing? But since His Royal Highness had asked, Bei had to answer. She lowered her gaze and said gingerly, Your Royal Highness, Qingqiao is Princess Ranmil's maid. Princess Ranmil. Feng Wu was intrigued. Has she not given up yet? Feng Wu murmured. Is this a final attempt? Jun Linyuan glanced at her. Don't look for trouble. Feng Wu snorted. She wanted to know what Ranmil was up to. Her instincts told her that given what Ranmil was like, this last attempt would be something big. But Jun Linyuan didn't seem interested at all, so Feng Wu waved at Bei. Leave us. Bei knew that both the Crown Prince and Miss Feng Wu were rejecting it. She quickly left the room. Qingqiao waited anxiously. When she saw Ranmil, who was hiding in a corner, she was even more anxious. Seeing Bei coming out, Qingqiao quickly walked up to her. How did it go? Bei patted her chest and threw a dirty look at Qingqiao. What do you think? You almost got me killed. Qingqiao's stomach sank. What? Bei looked around before she led Qingqiao to a quiet corner. Chapter 2080 Untitled. Chapter 2080 Untitled. That quiet corner was only 5 meters away from where Ranmil was hiding. Bei let out a long breath and stared at Qingqiao. It's not that I don't want to help you, but I can't. Please leave. She then gave the silver drafts back to Qingqiao. I can't accept this. I haven't done anything for you. Please take it back. She left after that, after making sure that there was no one around. Wait. Ranmil suddenly ran out of her hiding place. Huh. Caught off guard, Bei jumped and stared at Ranmil nervously. Why was the princess here? Bei looked at Qingqiao in bewilderment. Before Qingqiao could say anything, Ranmil ran to Bei's side, took her hand and asked anxiously. Tell me, did His Royal Highness not want to see me? Or did Feng Wu stop him from doing so? Ranmil simply wouldn't take no for an answer. The Crown Prince might now have an interest in her. He couldn't have remained indifferent to the enchanting body. After recalling what happened just now, she hesitated. Tell me, did Feng Wu stop His Royal Highness from seeing me? Speak. Bei thought that Ranmil was going to choke her. Qingqiao stopped Ranmil in a hurry. Princess, please calm down. Scared, Bei had to describe what she thought she had seen. Miss Feng Wu wasn't happy about it. His Royal Highness seemed intrigued, but Miss Feng Wu threatened him so. I knew it. It was Feng Wu. I knew it. His Royal Highness would never have turned me down. Ranmil was furious. Had it not been for Feng Wu, His Royal Highness would have said yes. Princess. Qingqiao was frightened by Ranmil. So was Bei. What would this frantic Ranmil do? Would she kill them? However, to Bei's surprise, Ranmil turned to leave. Just like that, Bei was perplexed. Qingqiao gave Bei an apologetic look and quickly followed Ranmil. Ranmil sat down at her desk after she went back to her tent. She closed her eyes and seemed to be considering something. No one could tell what she was thinking about. Suddenly she raised her hand. Seeing this, Qingqiao immediately prepared some ink for her. Once the ink, paper, and pen were ready, Ranmil opened her eyes. There was no warmth in her eyes. She looked like she was someone who had nothing to lose. She picked up the pen and wrote a letter without any pause. Qingqiao paled when she saw what the letter was about. She wanted to say something, but went silent when she saw the look on the princess's face. But she had broken into a cold sweat. Her princess was taking a bit of a risk. The ink hadn't dried when Ranmil picked up the letter. She carefully blew the ink dry before handing it to Qingqiao. Give this letter to His Royal Highness. Princess. Qingqiao knelt down and pleaded. Princess, please stop. There will be more excellent young men in the future. Chapter 2081 Untitled. Chapter 2081 Untitled. However, Ranmil said decisively, if I can't marry Jun Linyuan, I'd rather die. Go now. No matter what Qingqiao said, Ranmil wouldn't change her mind. Finally, Qingqiao had no choice but to take the letter. Princess, there's no turning back when I leave with this letter. Just go, said Ranmil coldly. Qingqiao was filled with despair. But since her princess had made up her mind, she had to follow her order. She took a breath and stepped out of the door. Come back, Ranmil suddenly said. Qingqiao was delighted and quickly ran back to her. While she thought that her princess was going to change her mind, Ranmil only took back the letter, unfolded it, and put a red leaf inside. It's a red heart leaf. Make sure that His Royal Highness gets it, Ranmil stressed. Qingqiao didn't let her emotions show and only said, yes. Outside Jun Lingyuan's tent. Bei was on duty tonight, so she couldn't leave. However, when she saw Qingqiao again, she almost walked away. Bei, Qingqiao smiled. Go away. Bei gestured at her to go away. Qingqiao walked up to her with a smile. Don't worry. I won't trouble you. But Bei didn't believe her. You should go away. Otherwise I'll have you removed. Qingqiao smiled. You'll be in trouble if you disturb the crown prince. Bei said. You. Qingqiao smiled. Don't worry. I won't tell Granny Gong that you took a lot of money from me and told me information about His Royal Highness. You. Bei glared at Qingqiao. Qingqiao smiled. Bei lowered her voice. Are you threatening me? Qingqiao said. Sister Bei, I'm only asking you for a little favor. It won't cost you anything, nor will it threaten your safety. What on earth do you want? Bei grew impatient. Qingqiao laughed inwardly. She said, You said it yourself just now. His Royal Highness was intrigued, and only said no because Miss Fengwu stopped him. So, Qingqiao took the letter out of her sleeve. Just take this letter to His Royal Highness. Bei wanted to say something, but Qingqiao went on. What His Royal Highness wants to do after that will be his choice, and you'll be off the hook. Bei took the letter and hesitated. Although the crown prince usually stayed out of household affairs, he wouldn't allow such things. Qingqiao said, If I'm guessing correctly, in 5 minutes, you'll change shifts with Xiangxiao, right? She was trying to hurry her up. Bei gritted her teeth. I just need to give His Royal Highness this letter and nothing more. Qingqiao said, Yes. Bei said, Do you mean it? Qingqiao said, Of course. Bei couldn't run into the tent just like this. If the crown prince was offended, she might be killed. Chapter 2082 Untitled. Chapter 2082 Untitled. But Bei became more hopeful. Was it possible that His Royal Highness actually liked Princess Ranmil? Bei went in with 2 cups of hot tea. When she walked past His Royal Highness, she swayed a little and dropped the letter that was in her sleeve. The envelope had Jun Lingyuan's name on it. Fengwu looked from Bei to the letter. Bei squatted down and tried to grab the letter. Your Royal Highness, please forgive me. Fengwu gave her a half smile. Why? What did you do? What? Bei was perplexed. Wasn't the crown prince supposed to be indifferent and didn't care about anything? Why? Bei tensed up and said gingerly. Your Royal Highness, the letter is from Qingqiao. She's Princess Ranmil's maid. She stuffed it in my sleeve. I tried to turn her down, but she put it in my sleeve when I wasn't looking. It's all my fault. Please forgive me. Fengwu looked at the maid and knew that she was full of lies. She was a good actress, but she had seen all kinds of good actors in her previous life, and Bei was only an amateur in comparison. Hand it over. Fengwu reached out her hand. She was just curious what Ranmil would do as a last resort. If she ignored Ranmil, that girl would keep trying something new. Fengwu would rather learn her purpose now. Bei handed the latter to the crown prince. She secretly rejoiced, wondering if His Royal Highness actually liked Ranmil. What's that? Jun Lingyuan had been reading. Seeing this, he walked over to Fengwu and sat down next to her. Fengwu was opening the letter. It's a letter from Ranmil. She looked up at Jun Lingyuan. Jun Lingyuan frowned. Fengwu said, Don't be mad. I'm just reading it. It's not like I'm going to do anything. Jun Lingyuan glanced at Fengwu and didn't seem pleased. Bei's heart raced when she saw their interaction. She held her breath, but she thought she had discovered the truth. She believed that His Royal Highness was really interested in Ranmil, but Fengwu was interfering. Miss Fengwu had crossed the line. Bei clenched her fists. Leave us. Fengwu glanced at Bei. The girl's thoughts were written all over her face. Yes. Bei bowed and left the tent. Back in the tent. What's this? Seeing the red leaf in the letter, Fengwu was curious, so she gave it to Jun Lingyuan. Jun Lingyuan hadn't seen it before either. Fengwu was even more curious. Even you don't know what it is? The crown prince said. Why should I know? Fengwu said. Because you're Jun Lingyuan. Jun Lingyuan murmured. But even Jun Lingyuan doesn't know what you're thinking. His tone was quite aggrieved when he said this, and his voice was so low that Feng Wu didn't hear him. What was that? Feng Wu asked. Jun Linyuan only glanced at her. Amused, Feng Wu called his name. Jun Linyuan. The crown prince looked at Feng Wu. Feng Wu's eyes twinkled. My princess. Chapter 2083. Out in the Open 1. Chapter 2083. Out in the Open 1. Jun Linyuan glared at Feng Wu. What did you say? Feng Wu thought. What else should I call you? You're like a 3-year-old grumpy princess. Of course, she wouldn't say that out loud. She looked down at the letter. Then she was furious. I've been wondering what she would do. This is out of line. Feng Wu was infuriated. It was rare for Feng Wu to be so angry. So Jun Linyuan took the letter from her and read it. He immediately frowned. It was indeed an outrageous letter. The letter was addressed to Jun Linyuan, and Ranmil was doing everything she could to smear Feng Wu's name. Ranmil said in the letter that she knew that Feng Wu was no longer a virgin, and that she had had indecent dealings with a man. She claimed that Feng Wu had betrayed the crown prince's trust. She insisted that she had a spiritual fossil stone, which had recorded the evidence of Feng Wu's deeds. At the end of the letter, she asked to see the crown prince in the maple woods behind the hill, where she would hand the crown prince the evidence. I can't stand this. Feng Wu snapped. What man? I'm the most decent girl. What affairs? Evidence. I'd like to see what evidence she has. She walked toward the door. A warm hand caught her. I believe you. Those 3 words meant all the world to her. Feng Wu's heart skipped a beat, but she was still angry. This is outright slander. I'd like to see what evidence she can show me. Humph. Feng Wu was about to storm off. Jun Linyuan didn't look too happy either. He followed Feng Wu without saying a word. As they walked toward the woods, Feng Wu said to Jun Linyuan, Why is Ranmil so evil? A girl's reputation is everything to her. She's trying to kill me. The crown prince nodded. Feng Wu said, I know she's trying to set you off and lure you into the woods. Who knows what's waiting for you there? Maybe she'll strip and yell that you want to rape her. Jun Linyuan was speechless. It's so hot. Feng Wu suddenly realized that something wasn't right. She suddenly knew what was going on. This isn't right. She took Jun Linyuan's hand. No, something's very wrong. Jun Linyuan looked at her. Feng Wu said, I don't usually lose my temper like this. What's happening to me today? I shouldn't have lashed out. It's not like me. It's so childish. Jun Linyuan was speechless. Feng Wu touched her forehead. I'm sweating. She then put a hand on her chest. My heart is beating fast. After that she checked her pulse. And my pulse has quickened as well. Feng Wu shook her head. This isn't right. I think I've been drugged. Jun Linyuan stared at her. Feng Wu gritted her teeth. It's the letter. No, it's not that. She took out the red leaf, sniffed it and smirked. I was right. Ranmil has tampered with this leaf. It has a lurid smell about it. Chapter 2084. Out in the Open 2. Chapter 2084. Out in the Open 2. Luckily, I'm also a girl, so it doesn't really affect me. The only effect is to quicken my heartbeat. That's all. Hearing this, Jun Linyuan asked, Are you sure you're all right? Feng Wu waved her hands. I just feel a little hot. Luckily, your body is strong enough, so this poison doesn't work on me. Something seemed to occur to Jun Linyuan, and he looked at Feng Wu without saying a word. That made Feng Wu fidget. Why are you looking at me like this? Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu's hands, before looking away. Feng Wu found that look on his face strange. So she pressed. Hey, tell me what's wrong. You're giving me the creeps. What's the problem? Don't blame me if something happens to your body. Jun Linyuan's face darkened when he heard Feng Wu's reminder. Go. Wash your hands. He stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu asked, What? I didn't touch anything dirty. Why? Before she could finish, Jun Linyuan pulled her away. They were headed for a creek on the east. Feng Wu didn't notice, but when Jun Linyuan pulled her away, the red leaf dropped to the ground. Jun Linyuan, you. What Jun Linyuan said next shocked her. That's the scent of an enchanting body. Don't you know what part of her body it comes from? Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu's hands. You just touched that thing with my hands. Are you stupid? Jun Linyuan wanted to sever Feng Wu's hands with his eyes. Feng Wu suddenly paled before she blushed. Holy crap. Are you saying that? Damn that Ran Mill. I'm gonna kill her. Jun Linyuan pushed Feng Wu toward the creek. Wash your hands. Even if he didn't tell her, Feng Wu would still wash her hands. She wished that she could chop them off. She felt like screaming. She had touched Ranmil's body fluid. That woman was nuts. Ranmil had no idea that Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were both furious. Right now she was walking in the woods. Princess, Qingqiao looked concerned. Ranmil stared at her. Are you sure that His Royal Highness received the letter himself? Qingqiao nodded. Ranmil said, Are you sure that His Royal Highness touched the leaf? Qingqiao nodded again. Ranmil smirked. Jun Linyuan, I don't care if you like me or not. From now on you're mine. Princess, shall I lure His Royal Highness here? Since they had done it, Qingqiao decided to help Ranmil to the end. The smell of that leaf will lure him here. Ranmil was very confident. I need to prepare now. Go back to your own business. Qingqiao nodded. Yes. After Qingqiao left, Ranmil changed into a see-through dress made of thin gauze. It showed a lot of skin. Chapter 2085. Out in the Open 3. Chapter 2085. Out in the Open 3. Ranmil had a great body. She was curvaceous with a tiny waist and long legs. She was hot enough to give any man a nosebleed. Moreover, she had an enchanting body. Jun Linyuan, it's about time you show up. Ranmil smirked and began to dance the last part of Fierce Face, which was very seductive. No man could resist the temptation. At the same time, in Emperor Wu's tent, the Emperor and Empress sat side by side on the bed. Empress Duga took Emperor Wu's hand and spoke in a piteous voice. Your Majesty, I meant everything I just said. I genuinely feel sorry for Princess Ranmil. Emperor Wu shook his head in resignation. Empress Duga said, His Royal Highness was being very inconsiderate. In that situation, even if he had to reject her, he should have been more tactful. That way, he won't affect the relationship between the Empire and the grassland. Emperor Wu nodded. Seeing that Emperor Wu agreed with her, Empress Dugu went on. But His Royal Highness simply said no, which must have humiliated the princess. How will the chieftain feel about this? The crown prince might have made us a new enemy. Emperor Wu didn't object, which was a sign that he thought the same. Empress Duga knew that she couldn't keep blaming the crown prince, for overdoing it would only counter what she was trying to achieve. She had to seem objective, so she changed the subject. She sighed and said, Of course, the Junwu Empire is so powerful that the grassland will never pose any threat to us. The crown prince has been proud since he was little. It'll be very hard to change him. It's just that. Poor Princess Ranmil. She's just a teenage girl. It's only natural that she would fall in love with a capable teenager. That was a very brave thing to do, confessing her love in front of everyone. There's nothing wrong with that. Empress Dugu said sympathetically. But His Royal Highness really crossed the line this time. His outright rejection must have hurt the princess. Emperor Wu's face darkened. Empress Duga then said, The princess won't try to hurt herself, will she? Emperor Wu frowned. Don't you think that's a bit of an exaggeration? Empress Dugu immediately knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said such things. Emperor Wu emptied his glass and waved her off. You're not wrong. What Jun Linyuan did was outrageous. Empress Dugu immediately said, Maybe His Royal Highness isn't as heartless as he seems. He probably did what he did to please Miss Feng Wu. To please Feng Wu? Has he lost his mind? He's the crown prince. Why should he please that girl? She's nobody. Emperor Wu's face turned livid. Why was he angry? Because that was what worried him the most. He didn't want to see the extraordinary boy become lost in his love for a girl. What an awful idea. At that thought, Emperor Wu rose to his feet. Your Majesty, it's in the middle of the night. Empress Duga tried to stop Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu snorted. I need to teach him a lesson before he forgets who he is. Chapter 2086, Out in the Open 4. Chapter 2086, Out in the Open 4. After that, Emperor Wu walked away. His servant quickly lifted the door curtain for him. Seeing Emperor Wu leave, Empress Dugu smirked. She would make sure that the father and son didn't see eye to eye. After Emperor Wu left, another person entered the tent. There was the sound of someone clapping. Empress Dugu knew who it was before she turned around. That was amazing, mother. You set father off with a few simple words. He's off to scold Jun Linyuan. And they'll get into a row again, said the second prince in a pleased tone. Their relationship will keep worsening until they become real enemies. Empress Dugu looked affectionately at her son. And the throne will be yours. The second prince nodded. He then said in a pleading tone, Mother, I want to marry Ranmil. Empress Dugu frowned. The second prince went on. Mother, what do you think I should look for in a wife? Empress Dugu said, the power of her maternal family. The second prince shook his head. That's important, but not the most important thing. Look at Jun Linyuan. He doesn't have that sort of power at all. Empress Dugu had nothing to say to that. The second prince said, Mother, the most important thing is her capability. With Jun Linyuan's capability, he can do whatever he wants. He has always ignored me. Empress Dugu felt sorry for her son. The second prince gritted his teeth. He won't dare to ignore me if I'm a powerful man. Mother, no matter how many powerful friends I have, the power is still theirs. I need to have power of my own. Ranmil knows the fierce face dance and has an enchanting body, the second prince said excitedly. After marrying her, I'll become so much more powerful. Empress Dugu asked, Are you sure of that? Mother, I haven't made much progress mainly because I love women and I'm too lazy. But once I have Ranmil, things will be different. I can make progress lying down. Mother, that's the most suitable way for me. There's only one Ranmil in the whole continent. I have to have her. The second prince pleaded. Didn't you hear her? She's in love with Jun Linyuan, said Empress Dugu. Mother, a woman will settle down after she's married. Once she's my wife, she'll have to obey me. If she so much as glances at Jun Linyuan, I'll break her legs. Empress Dugu didn't like the idea, but if the second prince's capability really could improve. All right, I'll help you. Empress Dugu was then lost in thought, as she tried to think of a way to marry Ranmil to her son. The cool wind outside cleared Emperor Wu's head. Should he go to Jun Linyuan and scold him? He shook his head. That defiant son wouldn't just stand there and listen to him. If scolding him worked, that boy wouldn't have become so unruly. But he had stormed out of the tent. Chapter 2087, Out in the Open 5. Chapter 2087, Out in the Open 5. Wang, the eunuch who had come out with him, was good at reading his master's mind. He saw that Emperor Wu was in an awkward situation, so he said, Your Majesty, it's a beautiful night. Emperor Wu looked up and saw the bright moon and twinkling stars. It wasn't cold. The wind felt cool on his skin. Come, let's take a walk in the mountains. Emperor Wu suddenly became interested, and he headed for the mountain up ahead. Wang followed him. Stay here. Don't follow me. Emperor Wu told his guards. Too many people would only annoy him. Hence, only Wang followed him. The walk indeed took the edge off his annoyance. What's that smell? Emperor Wu caught a strange fragrance when he was ready to return to the camp. Because he had been drinking, he was especially sensitive to the smell. Hearing that, Wang also sniffed. But he was confused. Your Majesty, I don't smell anything. That's not possible. The alcohol had mostly worn off, and Emperor Wu said stubbornly, I can smell it. It's a very nice smell. It's here. No, it's there. Emperor Wu looked around, and his gaze landed on a red leaf by his feet. Wang immediately picked it up and handed it to Emperor Wu. Your Majesty, is this what you're looking for? Emperor Wu picked it up and took a big sniff of it. Yes. What a strange smell. Suddenly, Emperor Wu was aroused. Your Majesty, Wang wanted to say something, but the emperor suddenly turned right and headed for the maple woods. Of course, Wang couldn't let him go alone. Emperor Wu listened and seemed to pick up a special tune. It was sometimes smooth and sometimes quick. Then, it became rather seductive. For some unknown reason, Emperor Wu's breathing quickened and his eyes turned red. He couldn't look away when he saw the dancing figure in the woods. Was that a fairy in the woods? Why was she so attractive? Emperor Wu seemed to be in a trance-like state, and his mind had gone blank. When he finally saw her face, his senses seemed to return to him for a brief moment. It was Ranmil. Emperor Wu immediately turned away. This was inappropriate. Ranmil liked Jun Linyuan, and was going to be his future daughter-in-law. But now, he was watching her when she was half-naked. In fact, Ranmil had noticed that a man was around. However, the person was hiding behind a bush, and she could only see his eyes. To seduce Jun Linyuan, Ranmil had drunk a whole bottle of potent aphrodisiac. That was the only way for Fierce Face to display its maximum effect. She had to seduce Jun Linyuan. It was a now or never thing. Ranmil's head was clouded, and she had begun to stumble. As she danced, she gradually approached the bush. Chapter 2088. Out in the Open 6. Chapter 2088. Out in the Open 6. The woods were dim in the moonlight. Because Emperor Wu wore his casual robe and had his back to Ranmil, he resembled Jun Linyuan a lot. Ranmil was exhilarated. There was a frantic look in her eyes. Without thinking, Ranmil put her arms around Emperor Wu's waist from behind, pressed herself to his back, and breathed on his ear. Boom! Immediately, Emperor Wu lost control, and his head went blank. Ranmil was under the influence of the aphrodisiac, while Emperor Wu had stopped thinking altogether. With the girl's seduction, they abandoned all moral concerns and fell together on the ground. The moon seemed to feel abashed, and hid behind the clouds. Their heavy panting filled the air. Wang slowly backed away. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan had no idea what was going on in the woods. Right now they were sitting by the creek. Feng Wu was rubbing her hands as hard as she could. She had almost rubbed her fingers raw. She sighed. Luckily they're not my hands. Otherwise I'd be crying so hard. The Crown Prince's face darkened. I've washed them 10 times. Isn't that enough? Feng Wu asked. Again. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu and said sternly. Left with no other choice, Feng Wu had to wash her hands again. 15 times already. Again. Feng Wu was speechless. This guy was so inconsiderate. She glanced at Jun Linyuan and complained. You were laughing at me at first because you didn't realize that this was your body, right? Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu. You don't need to talk while washing your hands. Feng Wu made a face. By the time she washed her hands 20 times, they were red and swollen. She stopped and said, My skin is peeling. I guess that's enough to wash any dirt away. Jun Linyuan snorted and tossed a dagger to Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. Do you know how to kill a person? Jun Linyuan asked arrogantly. Kill a person? Who? Ranmil? Feng Wu asked. Jun Linyuan smirked and turned to leave. Feng Wu ran after him and asked, Hey Jun Linyuan, do you mean it? Are you going to kill her just because of that disgusting red leaf? Jun Linyuan's face was very dark, and he was obviously in a bad mood. Feng Wu said, Yes, what Ranmil did was outrageous. But that was probably because she thought it would work on you. Jun Linyuan found her suggestion idiotic. Are you saying that I'm stupid? Feng Wu said, Of course not. You're much cleverer than that. Jun Linyuan wanted to grab her arm, but Feng Wu ran off before he could catch her. However, given what Jun Linyuan had just said, she knew that it was only a matter of time before he had Ranmil killed. Wait, what's that sound? Feng Wu suddenly stopped Jun Linyuan and pricked up her ears. Since Feng Wu was using Jun Linyuan's body now, her eyes and ears were much sharper. Nothing could escape her hearing. Jun Linyuan frowned at her. Your body is too weak. He couldn't hear a thing. Feng Wu cleared her throat and led Jun Linyuan away. Chapter 2089. Out in the Open 7. Chapter 2089. Out in the Open 7. I really heard something. It's on the east side. Something's happening now. Come, let's have a look. When Feng Wu dragged Jun Linyuan into the maple woods, they saw the two entangled bodies on the ground, and both of them were astonished. Before Feng Wu could make a sound, someone stepped out and shushed her. It was none other than Wang the eunuch. He looked embarrassed to see Jun Linyuan. Everyone knew that just 2 hours ago, Ranmil had begged the crown prince to love her. But now she was with the emperor. That was... Feng Wu pointed at the man and woman that were lost in their passion, her eyes wide with astonishment. They really are. Despite his embarrassment, Wang nodded with a serious look on his face. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Jun Linyuan was speechless. Let's go. Feng Wu quickly led Jun Linyuan away. The crown prince had never faced such a ridiculous situation either, and was perplexed. He didn't resist when Feng Wu dragged him away. Wang let out a breath of relief. He had been really worried just then, fearing that the crown prince would kill Ranmil on the spot. After all, the princess had sounded too affectionate and sincere when she confessed her love for him. But now, no man would endure such humiliation. However, the smile immediately froze on his face. Because Empress Dugu had arrived. And she wasn't alone. A team of officials was with her. The wives of the officials as well. Even the chieftain and the princes of the grassland had been invited. This was Ranmil's plan. She was certain that she could seduce Jun Linyuan, but she was worried that the crown prince would go back on his word. So she sent Qingqiao to let Empress Dugu know. The empress didn't like the idea of her son marrying Ranmil. She didn't want such a woman as her daughter-in-law. However, if Jun Linyuan were to marry her, Empress Dugu had enough power to ruin his reputation. Therefore, as soon as she heard about it from Qingqiao, she gathered the wives. Feeling that just the wives wouldn't be enough, she gathered the officials as well. When they marched toward the woods, they ran into the men of the grassland. Why did they just happen to show up there? Of course, it was because of Qingqiao as well. Hence, the two groups of people headed for the woods together. The excuse they gave was that Ranmil was so devastated after Jun Linyuan turned her down that she had gone missing. What if she jumped off a cliff? With that excuse, Empress Dugu walked very fast. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were about to leave when they heard footsteps. They looked at each other and felt that something was wrong. This was a trap. Without thinking, they jumped up into a tree. They both chose the thickest old tree with heavy branches nearby. Chapter 2090. Out in the Open 8. Chapter 2090. Out in the Open 8. As soon as they hid in the leaves, Empress Dugu arrived with the group of people. Feng Wu gave Jun Linyuan a strange look. Is she here to catch your father in the act? She rubbed her chin. An idea seemed to strike Jun Linyuan, and his face turned livid. Feng Wu realized it as well. Wait, that letter was for you. That is to say, you were Ranmil's target tonight. But for some unknown reason, she ended up with your father. That doesn't make sense. The moon is bright, and the air is quite clear. Ranmil couldn't have mistaken him for you, right? That was true. Only 15 minutes ago, the moon had been behind thick clouds. Now, however, moonlight pierced the clouds, and the silver light was as clear as water. One could see everything. While they were still talking, Empress Dugu arrived. OMG! Granny Chung, who was Empress Dugu's servant, cried out. Isn't that the crown prince? And is that Princess Ranmil? Everyone was astonished. The crown prince and Princess Ranmil? They had been rolling around naked in the woods, and there were red leaves in their hair. Didn't the crown prince say that he didn't like the princess? Didn't His Royal Highness turn her down? I thought that the crown prince was into Feng Wu. His Royal Highness. By then, Emperor Wu and Ranmil had woken up from their passion. They saw each other's faces. Emperor Wu remained calm, because he had known who she was from the beginning. Ranmil felt as if she had been struck by lightning, and her head went blank. Emperor Wu. It was him. How was this possible? God! After everything she had tried, she had lost her virginity to Emperor Wu. Arg! She felt like she was having a breakdown. When she turned around and saw the crowd, she fainted. Emperor Wu was embarrassed. So many officials were watching, and even his wife was here. Things wouldn't be so awkward if Ranmil hadn't confessed her love for Jun Linyuan. But now, it looked like he had taken his son's woman deliberately. Hence, Emperor Wu kept giving Wang warning glances, telling him to get rid of the crowd. Since these people were so sure that the man who had slept with Ranmil was Jun Linyuan, so be it. Wang gritted his teeth and was about to intervene. What's going on? Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan jumped down from the tree and walked toward the crowd. Everyone was surprised to see them. Wait, His Royal Highness is here. Then who's with Princess Ranmil? Who has done such a thing? Empress Dugu was dumbfounded. Yes, if that man wasn't Jun Linyuan, who was he? Chapter 2091. Out in the Open 9. Chapter 2091. Out in the Open 9. The chieftain was dumbfounded as well. Bring that man here. I would like to know who has taken advantage of Princess Ranmil. Empress Dugu was furious. If it wasn't for Jun Linyuan, she wouldn't have to go through all this trouble. It meant that all her efforts tonight had been for nothing. Damn it. Empress Dugu had brought 4 guards with her, so they rushed toward the man. And they froze on the spot when they saw Emperor Wu's face. His Majesty. Meanwhile, Emperor Wu was so embarrassed that his face had turned livid. He hated Empress Dugu so much right now. If she hadn't brought all these people here and dragged him out, there wouldn't be such a scandal. Emperor Wu hated Jun Linyuan as well. He has to know that it was me. Why did he have to show up? Nothing would happen if he just made people think that it was him. The more Emperor Wu thought about it, the angrier he became. At this point he had to admit what he had done. After getting dressed, he walked out of the bushes. When Empress Dugu saw Emperor Wu, she felt as if she had been hit by a thunderclap. Her head went numb, and a chill ran down her spine. She stared at Emperor Wu. How could this have happened? Emperor Wu looked from Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu to the rest of the crowd. Everyone was astonished. It was him. It was His Majesty. So, Emperor Wu knew that he had to admit what he had done. Princess Ranmil is Consort Ranmil now, Emperor Wu said coldly. He then flipped his sleeves and walked away. Consort Ranmil? Where did that come from? And the new Consort Ranmil had an enchanting body. Empress Dugu felt like crying. She was so frustrated, and wondered if things would have been different if she hadn't told the Emperor how sorry she felt for Ranmil. Would things be different if she hadn't done everything she could to frame Jun Linyuan? But it was too late to regret it now. She had a new rival. In the chieftain's tent. The look on the chieftain's face was indescribable as he looked at Ranmil, who was still unconscious. He couldn't decide if this was good or bad news. However, he couldn't live with the fact that his daughter had become Consort Ranmil, because a crowd of people had all seen her naked. His daughter was the sacred lady of the grassland. Her body wasn't supposed to be seen by all those people. Keep an eye on her. The chieftain stormed off. He needed an explanation from Emperor Wu. After he left, the others left as well. In the darkness, Ranmil slowly opened her eyes. They were cold and filled with hatred. In fact, she had never fainted, but it was better to stay unconscious in that situation. Otherwise, she wouldn't know how to face those curious eyes. She knew everything that had happened after that. Qingqiao came in with a bowl of porridge. She had just put the bowl down on the table when someone hit her in the neck, knocking her out. Chapter 2092. Out in the Open 10. Chapter 2092. Out in the Open 10. Qingqiao swayed, but a hand caught her and slowly placed her on the ground without making a sound. Alarmed, Ranmil jumped to her feet. She saw a pair of cold eyes in the dark. What a pair of eyes! They were sharp, dark, bloodthirsty, and without warmth. No one would dare to be his enemy. You failed, said the man in black. Ranmil gritted her teeth and stared at the man. Was it your doing? Was it? The man only gave her a sympathetic look. Ranmil thought that she was going to lose her mind. She ran toward the man and glared at him. It was you, wasn't it? You did something. And the man became Emperor Wu. It was Jun Linyuan at first. I remember it. The man shook his head and told her the truth. No, it was Emperor Wu all along. Ranmil said, I don't believe you. What went wrong? Why did this happen? I don't believe you. The man in the black robe patiently told Ranmil everything, leaving out no details. He didn't try to mislead her in any way. Only then did Ranmil know that Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan had gone to the creek, and that it was Emperor Wu who had taken a stroll in the woods. It had been the emperor from the very beginning. You saw everything. Why didn't you stop us? How could you let it happen? How could you? Ranmil was filled with despair. The look the man gave her was a mix of sympathy and malice. What a complicated man. After Ranmil was done crying, he said coldly, It's your fate. You lost your final chance. Accept the fact that you failed. Ranmil remained silent for a very long time. The farewell banquet had been her last chance, and she had begged the man for one last try, but she had failed again. Should she acknowledge her failure? She didn't want to. Jun Linyuan never liked you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so disgusted when he realized that your body fluid was on that leaf. He washed his hands 20 times in the creek. I don't believe you. Ranmil gritted her teeth. I'm the only one on this continent who has an enchanting body. He wouldn't treat me like that. The man waved his hand, and there was an image on the wall. In it, Jun Linyuan was crouching by the creek and washing his hands until they were raw. There was no sound. All they could see was him washing his hands repeatedly. No. Ranmil finally saw how much Jun Linyuan disliked her. I disgust him. Ranmil finally saw the truth. And something changed within her. There was no warmth, but a murderous look in her eyes. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. I'll make him regret it forever. Ranmil clenched her fists. She now hated Jun Linyuan from the bottom of her heart. Chapter 2093, Return 1. Chapter 2093, Return 1. What good will your hate do you? The man smirked. Do you think you can get revenge? Ranmil clenched her fists. Yes. The man looked at her. Ranmil said, Since I can't be his wife, I'll be his stepmother. The man seemed pleased. But the look disappeared, so quickly that no one would have noticed, least of all Ranmil, who was consumed with hatred. I'll make him pay for this. I want him dead. Ranmil glared at the man. The Dongseng kingdom can't wait to see him dead, right? The man chuckled. Ranmil said, Not only can I persuade Emperor Wu in the bedroom, I can also provoke conflict between Jun Linyuan and the second prince. I can create chaos in the entire Zhenwu Empire. Isn't that good news for your kingdom? The man only smiled and didn't say a word. Ranmil said, But I won't do it for free. The man said, The fierce face dance. Ranmil said furiously, Yes, you taught me that dance and helped me achieve the enchanting body. But that's not an excuse for me to help you unconditionally. I need a reward. The man asked, What reward would you like? Ranmil then whispered something in his ear. What she said shocked the man. He hesitated for 2 seconds before he looked at Ranmil. Are you serious? Ranmil nodded. You have my word. Give me that, and I'll help you unconditionally. The man smiled. How interesting. Jun Linyuan may regret it one day. Ranmil snorted. I'll make him regret what he did today forever. The man said, All right. The Dongseng kingdom will give you what you want. Ranmil stared at him. Can you make the call? The man said in a deep voice, If I can't, then no one in Dongseng can. Everyone seemed to be sleeping at this hour, but in fact, the rumor had already gotten around. The Empress hadn't taken too many people with her. There had only been 10 officials and their wives. But news like this spread faster than anyone could imagine. Emperor Wu wanted to stop people from talking about the incident, but there were simply too many people. Within an hour, people on both sides heard about it. Even the grooms for the horses knew what had happened. But no one dared talk about it openly. Everyone discussed it in private. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan went back to the camp. Xiaowu, Xiaowu. Chaoga finally saw Feng Wu again, and she ran happily toward her. Although she had been caned, thanks to Feng Wu's amazing medicine, she was soon able to walk again with a slight limp. Xiaowu, Guess what? Chaoga tried to take Feng Wu's hand. I'm doing great. I'm a level 8 spiritual elder now. Can you believe it? Chaoga shouted as she ran. Chapter 2094, Return 2. Chapter 2094, Return 2. When she reached Feng Wu, she wanted to take her hand. But Xiao Wu stared at her with cold eyes. What? Startled, Chaoga stumbled back. She looked at Feng Wu in fright. Meanwhile, Feng Wu glanced at her, before walking into Jun Linyuan's tent. Of course, this Feng Wu was in fact Jun Linyuan. The real Feng Wu wanted to talk to Chaoga, but she had to maintain her image as Jun Linyuan. Hence, she had to walk into Jun Linyuan's tent as well. Soon, they disappeared through the doorway. Chaoga was speechless. She looked at the tent in confusion and astonishment. She asked Qiuling, "What do you think happened to Xiao Wu?" Qiuling shook her head. Chaoga rubbed her chin. Is she mad at me because my level is higher than hers now? Qiuling rolled her eyes at her. Chaoga said, No, Xiao Wu isn't like that. In that case, is it because she's in love? Qiuling looked confused. Chaoga scratched her head. Xiao Wu has been telling us that she doesn't like His Royal Highness, and never will. But now, why is she like that now? Qiuling was speechless. The more Chaoga spoke, the more scared she became. She was almost in tears when she said, Qiuling, do you think we'll still have Xiao Wu by this time next year? Qiuling shook her head, and found Chaoga a little ridiculous. She yawned and went back to her tent. Qiuling, where are you going? Chaoga asked. We're setting off for the imperial capital tomorrow. It'll be a tiresome journey. Miss Chaoga, get some rest. Qiuling waved at her. After knowing her mistress all these years, Qiuling believed that Feng Wu had to be doing this for a reason. Once she got what she wanted, she would be back to normal. As for being in love with a man, her mistress wouldn't do such a thing. The following day, before they set off, Emperor Wu sent Wang to get Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu was woken up. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked at Jun Linyuan. I'm so sleepy. Make him go away. Jun Linyuan nodded and told Feng, send him away. Wait. Feng Wu jumped to her feet. Does your father want to see you? Jun Linyuan nodded casually. Feng Wu said, fine. I'll go see him before he gets angry again. Jun Linyuan frowned and looked at Feng Wu. You don't have to go. Feng Wu said grumpily. That's Emperor Wu, the most prominent figure in the empire. You're so careless. After quickly washing her face, Feng Wu was about to leave the tent. Jun Linyuan frowned and said, Your hair is messy. Feng Wu asked, How? It looks good to me. Jun Linyuan said, The left side is higher. Feng Wu checked in the mirror and saw only the tiniest difference. She rolled her eyes at Jun Linyuan and said, You're so fussy. Jun Linyuan asked, What did you say? Feng Wu said, Never mind. You won't understand. I'm off to see your father. After taking a few steps, she stopped abruptly and looked back at Jun Linyuan. Chapter 2095 Quarrel. Chapter 2095 Quarrel. The Crown Prince was confused. What are you waiting for? Feng Wu frowned. She had almost forgotten about something very important. The 9th trial. For the trial, she and Jun Linyuan had to stay within 10 steps of each other. Therefore, she ran back to Jun Linyuan. He stared at her. What? Feng Wu held his arm. Come with me. The Crown Prince refused. No, but Feng Wu was simply too persuasive. In the end, she dragged Jun Linyuan away with her. In the camp, everyone was busy preparing to set out. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan went to Emperor Wu's tent together. Usually, Emperor Wu was with Empress Dugu, but today, Feng Wu saw that he was all by himself. This was the first time that he was alone. She then saw a long scratch on Emperor Wu's forehead. Was that from a long nail? It seemed that the emperor had quite a rough night. Feng Wu chuckled inwardly, but her face remained indifferent. Emperor Wu was glad to see Jun Linyuan, but he snorted when he saw Feng Wu. He was shocked by how bold Jun Linyuan had become. The boy was talking Feng Wu with him everywhere. Emperor Wu gave Jun Linyuan a dirty look and said, Do you have to have that girl with you? Feng Wu quickly found an excuse. Well, she wouldn't stop crying unless I brought her with me. It's too much trouble to turn her down. Jun Linyuan glared at her from behind. He wanted to drill a hole in her back with his eyes. Of course, Emperor Wu wouldn't believe such an excuse. He only extended his hand to Feng Wu. Give it to me. Feng Wu asked. What? Emperor Wu only stared at Feng Wu and didn't give any further explanation. But Feng Wu only looked confused. Emperor Wu was furious. He couldn't bring himself to say it and was waiting for his son's help. At that thought, he glared at Feng Wu. The contract. The real Feng Wu looked enlightened. I see. Your Majesty. Are you referring to the contract that Princess Ranmil signed last night? Since Emperor Wu had made Ranmil a consort, naturally, he wouldn't let someone else have such a contract. Putting his hands behind his back, Emperor Wu nodded coldly. So Princess Ranmil really wants to become a consort? Feng Wu asked curiously. But Emperor Wu seemed to have misunderstood her. He turned around and glared at Jun Linyuan. What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying that she doesn't want to marry me because she's in love with you? It was obvious that Emperor Wu was angry. Had Feng Wu been herself, she would have given in already, but she was playing Jun Linyuan now. If she showed any weakness, Emperor Wu would notice that something was wrong. Therefore, Feng Wu raised her chin and smirked. Didn't your Majesty attend the farewell banquet as well? Jun Linyuan, do you want to give me a heart attack? Emperor Wu was furious. Isn't that the truth? Feng Wu went on smirking. She knew that she was provoking Emperor Wu. Because if Ranmil really became consort Ranmil, she would become a formidable enemy. Although she wasn't very capable herself, she was driven by her hatred for Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu. Chapter 2096. In the same room. Chapter 2096. In the same room. Ranmil's enchanting body would also charm the socks off Emperor Wu. Pillow talk could be very frightening, because Emperor Wu would listen to Ranmil. Therefore, Feng Wu was trying to mess things up. It would be ideal if Emperor Wu couldn't marry Ranmil. But what really happened was, Emperor Wu stared at Feng Wu. So what? Feng Wu was surprised. At the end of the day, she's still my consort. Jun Linyuan, do you regret it now? Having tried the enchanting body, Emperor Wu had to have Ranmil now. Your Majesty, enjoy that frivolous woman. Don't let her harm other people again, said Feng Wu with a smile. At that moment, they heard a noise outside. It was Ranmil, who had arrived with the chieftain, but she heard those words before she entered the tent. She burst into tears and dashed off. Emperor Wu had wanted to get the contract back to please his new consort, but things didn't turn out as he expected. Jun Linyuan, are you going to give me the contract or not? Emperor Wu was furious. Feng Wu crossed her hands behind her back and said, I can't find it. Emperor Wu said, What? Feng Wu said, I don't know where I put it. Your Majesty, did you really think I would put it away carefully, like it's some treasure? Emperor Wu said, You. Feng Wu said, That's why they say one will lose a father when there's a stepmother. My father is angry at me for misplacing a piece of paper. Emperor Wu pointed at the door. Get out. Get out of my sight. So be it. Feng Wu dragged Jun Linyuan away with her. Infuriated, Emperor Wu smashed the inkstone on his table. Back in Jun Linyuan's tent, Feng Wu patted her chest and let out a breath of relief. Gosh, I was so scared. If your father swung at me, I wouldn't be able to withstand the strike. Jun Linyuan looked at her and said, Yes, you would. Feng Wu looked perplexed. Jun Linyuan said, He's not my match. After the initial astonishment, Feng Wu smiled and said, Are you saying that Emperor Wu wouldn't dare touch you? Jun Linyuan said, Yes. Feng Wu said, Does that mean that I can do it again? Jun Linyuan looked at her, seemingly perplexed. Does that make you happy? Feng Wu said, Why do you even ask? Of course it makes me happy. Emperor Wu is the most powerful man in the empire. Making him upset gives me such a sense of fulfillment. You don't see it? The crown prince shook his head. No, Feng Wu said. Well, you've been clashing with him since you were little. So of course you don't feel the way I do. To common folk like me, such an achievement is worth bragging about for the rest of my life. Jun Linyuan was rendered speechless by the chattering Feng Wu. Your Royal Highness, the carriage is ready, Feng said outside the tent. Jun Linyuan nodded and headed for the door. Feng Wu said, Wait, which carriage are you going to sit in? Jun Linyuan looked at the Crown Prince's carriage without saying a word. The interior of that carriage was very comfortable, and everything was customized for him. He wouldn't like any other carriage. Feng Wu said, But you're me now. Chapter 2097, The Young Prince's Request. Chapter 2097, The Young Prince's Request. Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu and said, I'll sit with you then. Feng Wu was waiting for him to say that. If she brought it up, Jun Linyuan would feel good about himself again, and assume that she was in love with him. She was glad that he had reached that conclusion himself. Jun Linyuan chuckled inwardly when he saw the smile on Feng Wu's face. Many people were walking around, because everyone was getting ready to set out. The chieftain came to see them off with his sons and daughters. Your Majesty, my brother-in-law, the younger prince greeted Emperor Wu. Unlike his attitude toward the older prince, Emperor Wu was quite friendly toward the younger prince, since he had a plan of his own. And he wanted to support the younger prince. Given his guilt toward Ranmil, he was even nicer to the prince. Prince of Gomel, do you have any questions? Gomel was the title Emperor Wu had given the younger prince, making him the first prince of the grassland. Not everyone had agreed with his move. And to his surprise, even the prince himself objected to it. Your Majesty, may I exchange this title for something else? The prince asked gingerly in a low voice. Emperor Wu's face darkened a little. What? Your Majesty, I'm sorry for saying this, but a young lady saved my life, and I promised that I would marry her. I can't break my promise. Everyone looked at the Prince of Gomel. Had he lost his mind? Didn't he realize what it meant to become the first prince of the grassland? Why would he want to give it up for a woman? While Emperor Wu was disappointed at his lack of ambition, the other members of the grassland were relieved. Emperor Wu glowered at the younger prince. Was he dumb or clever? The young prince had almost ruined his entire plan. Which young lady? Emperor Wu snorted. If you like her so much, I'll let her stay in the grassland and marry you. The younger prince was elated. Thank you, Your Majesty. The prince dropped to his knees and thanked the emperor. Everyone was perplexed. What kind of beauty would make a prince give up his right to the throne? Who is she? Emperor Wu was angry and curious at the same time. The younger prince took out a scroll. This is a painting of the young lady, the younger prince said shyly. Emperor Wu glanced at Wang. Wang went to the prince and fetched the scroll for Emperor Wu. When Emperor Wu saw the painting, he was astonished. He glared at the younger prince. Is this really the woman you want to marry? The younger prince prostrated on the ground and said, Yes. I promised her that I would marry her. Brother-in-law, please give me your permission. The younger prince hadn't been bold enough to make that request at first. He had been recovering from his injuries, but once he was back on his feet again, he heard that the people of the Zhenhua Empire were leaving the following day. Therefore, he came here to beg this of Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu burned with rage as he studied the painting. He decided that Feng Wu was a frivolous woman who had seduced both Jun Linyuan and the younger prince. Get Feng Wu here, he shouted angrily. Everyone looked at him in surprise. Feng Wu? Was she the person on the younger prince's scroll? But why? Wasn't Feng Wu in love with the crown prince? Since when was she into the younger prince? Chapter 2098. An incident created by a painting. Chapter 2098. An incident created by a painting. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan had just agreed that they were going to sit in the same carriage, but before they could get into it, Wang arrived. Princess Feng Wu, His Majesty wants to see you, said Wang with a smile. Feng Wu frowned. Was Emperor Wu still obsessed with Ranmil's contract? She glanced at Jun Linyuan and wondered what she would do if the emperor forced her to give him the contract. Jun Linyuan said, Ignore him. Wang looked at Jun Linyuan in astonishment, shocked by how bold Princess Fengwu was. Seeing the look on Wang's face, Fengwu knew that Jun Linyuan had said the wrong thing. She knew how smart Jun Linyuan was. And of course, he would realize what trouble those words would bring the real Fengwu. But he was too proud to pretend. That was how resolute Jun Linyuan was. Wang smiled wryly. All the high-ranking officials of the empire and the Sinal grassland were there when His Majesty made the announcement. That was to say, if Fengwu didn't go, Emperor Wu would be humiliated. Jun Linyuan was a different story. But if even Fengwu wouldn't respect Emperor Wu, the power of the empire would become a joke. And if the emperor lost his temper, the consequences would be very severe. For her own safety, Fengwu tugged at Jun Linyuan and said, "I'll go with you." The crown prince was a little reluctant. Fengwu moved closer and whispered, "Behave yourself and I'll owe you one, all right?" Jun Linyuan looked at Fengwu arrogantly. Fengwu said, "I'll let you order me around for once." The crown prince said, "And I can make you do anything." Fengwu held up her hand and took an oath. "Anything?" Jun Linyuan said, "All right." He walked out of the tent after that, and Fengwu quickly followed him. Wang watched them, his sharp eyes flickering. Fengwu and Emperor Wu arrived at Emperor Wu's tent. The younger prince was kneeling on the ground. Seeing Fengwu, he grew excited and kept winking at her. However, Fengwu was actually Jun Linyuan. The crown prince didn't even look in his direction. He stood there with an impatient look on his face. The crown prince had never been a patient person. He only came here because Fengwu had persuaded him. Seeing that Fengwu stood there without showing any intention to kneel, Emperor Wu was furious. He lashed out at her. "Fengwu, do you know what you've done?" Fengwu's stomach lurched. What was this about? Fearing that Jun Linyuan would try to hit his father, Fengwu immediately stood between him and his father. She put on Jun Linyuan's well-known cold face and asked, "Father, what's going on?" Emperor Wu stared at Jun Linyuan. "You idiot." Fengwu looked perplexed. Emperor Wu then threw the scroll at him. "Look." Fengwu caught the scroll and unfolded it. She saw a painting of her. She rather liked it. "It's not bad at all. My features are portrayed quite accurately." She even showed it to Jun Linyuan. "Look, isn't it a nice painting?" Jun Linyuan snorted. "How petty." Fengwu said, "It's quite vivid. Can you do something like this?" Chapter 2099, It Has to Be Her. Chapter 2099, It Has to Be Her. Jun Linyuan said, "I can do much better." Seeing that the young couple was whispering to each other, Emperor Wu was furious. He had called them here to drive them apart. "Fengwu, look what you've done." Emperor Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan frowned and glanced at him. His arrogance infuriated Emperor Wu. But he knew that now wasn't the time to get angry. He had something more important to do. Therefore, he stared at the younger prince and said, "Repeat your request." Ever since Fengwu entered the tent, she was all that the younger prince could see. Hearing Emperor Wu, he looked away from the girl and said, "Your Majesty, please let Princess Fengwu stay here in the grassland and marry her to me. She's all that I want." Those words shocked everyone. Fengwu was dumbfounded. What on earth was this? Involuntarily, she looked at Jun Linyuan, and as expected, his face was livid. She knew that he was going to lose his temper. Jun Linyuan glared at the younger prince. What? The younger prince had been looking affectionately at Fengwu, but he didn't expect her to be so fierce. The look in her eyes was even more frightening than his older brother's. He didn't even dare look into her eyes. The tent suddenly became very quiet. No one dared to make a sound. Emperor Wu frowned. This wasn't the effect he had expected. Right now, Ranmil was standing behind him. Ranmil had adjusted her mood. She decided that since she couldn't marry Jun Linyuan, she would try her best to make his life a living hell. If she couldn't make him love her, she would make him hate her. That way, he would remember her forever. Of course, she wouldn't miss the chance to humiliate Fengwu and Jun Linyuan. Moreover, She had instigated the younger prince into proposing to Feng Wu. At that thought, Ranmil stepped out, held Emperor Wu's arm and smiled. Your Majesty, please don't get angry. It might be some misunderstanding. We don't want to slander Princess Feng Wu. Hearing that, everyone looked at Ranmil. How interesting. Ranmil had lost Jun Linyuan to Feng Wu. Now that she was going to become the crown prince's stepmother, she was looking down on the young couple. Master Dugu and Master Zhou looked at each other, and there were faint smiles on their faces. Emperor Wu looked at Ranmil. My love, what do you think? Ranmil said softly. I think we should ask my brother why he has to marry Princess Feng Wu. Why can't it be someone else? This reminded the others, that was right. Why did it have to be Feng Wu? The younger prince clenched his fists and said solemnly, I ran into danger several times in the mountains and almost lost my life. Princess Feng Wu helped me in time and saved my life. I took the oath there, and then that I would marry no one else. Feng Wu frowned. She hadn't expected this outcome. Miss Feng Wu, is that true? Ranmil smiled at Jun Linyuan. Chapter 2100 Jun Linyuan Cares. Chapter 2100 Jun Linyuan Cares. Jun Linyuan couldn't be bothered to look at Ranmil, because he was so furious that he didn't want to talk to anyone. All he could see was Feng Wu, and the fire in his eyes was hot enough to burn Feng Wu to ash. The look in his eyes made Feng Wu uneasy. What the younger prince said had annoyed Jun Linyuan. As a result, he was very angry. From afar, the temperature around the two of them seemed to rise, as if the air was catching on fire. Seeing that Feng Wu wouldn't speak to her, Ranmil smiled and said, Miss Feng Wu, if you don't answer the question, I'll take it as a yes. Ranmil had been portraying herself as an innocent teenage girl before, but after the incident in the tombs, she took a different path and became a sexy woman instead. Now, however, she wanted to play the role of a considerate big sister. She was glad that Feng Wu wasn't saying anything, and she wouldn't give her that chance either. Instead, Ranmil asked her younger brother, Princess Feng Wu didn't know it when you made that oath, did she? I think it was only your wishful thinking. Jun Linyuan turned to stare at the younger prince. So did Feng Wu. But the younger prince said something very surprising. No, I made that oath in front of Princess Feng Wu, and she didn't object. Wow. Those words felt like a hammer smashing into Feng Wu's head, and she felt dizzy. The crown prince had relaxed a little, but hearing those words, he glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu's heart was beating so fast that it was going to jump out of her throat. She looked like a trapped animal, and she was a little scared. Ranmil couldn't wait to see Feng Wu dead. Of course, she wouldn't miss such a great opportunity. She smiled and said, Feng Wu, if you agreed to marry my brother, then why are you still obsessed with the crown prince? You can't marry them both. Which one will you choose? Although she asked Feng Wu to choose, in fact, she had pinned the crime on Feng Wu. If Feng Wu couldn't explain herself, that stigma would stay with her forever. Whenever people talked about her in the future, they would say that she was a frivolous woman. Although Feng Wu didn't think much of it, Jun Linyuan minded it very much. Was she going to endure Jun Linyuan's rage? Was she going to let Ranmil succeed? Was she going to become a joke? Meanwhile, Jun Linyuan clenched his fists and turned to leave. Hey! She couldn't let him go. She would be ruined. Feng Wu immediately took Jun Linyuan's hand and looked at him with twinkling eyes. Jun Linyuan glowered at Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked back at him, shook her head, and whispered something in his ear. Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes slightly, but still looked a little angry. Feng Wu repeated her words again. Trust me. Feng Wu took a deep breath. I don't care what other people think. All I care about is your trust. All I care about is you. That was what the crown prince heard. He gave Feng Wu one final sharp look before brushing off her hand. Feng Wu felt her stomach sink. Was Jun Linyuan still going to storm off? No, he wasn't. As a matter of fact, he quickly walked toward the younger prince. No one knew what she was going to do. Chapter 2101. How dare you? Chapter 2101. How dare you? Feng Wu raised her fist. Thump. She then punched the younger prince in the nose. Everyone was astonished, including the younger prince himself. He stared at Princess Feng Wu in disbelief. You. She was the woman he wanted to marry, but she had just hit him. Covering his nose, the prince stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Because Feng Wu's body was still weak, Jun Linyuan's punch hadn't done much damage to him. Had Jun Linyuan been in his own body, the prince would have been killed already. Before the prince could react, Jun Linyuan punched him again. The poor prince was knocked to the ground. Thump, thump, thump. Jun Linyuan kept throwing punches at his head. He was the crown prince. Would his punches be the same as other people's? Obviously not. He aimed at the spots that would hurt the most. Therefore, after a few punches, the poor prince collapsed on the ground and was barely breathing. Feng Wu covered her eyes involuntarily. She preferred to use her brain to solve problems. Jun Linyuan was smarter than she was, but he couldn't be bothered to think, and had chosen to directly use his fists. However, what everyone else saw was that Feng Wu had beaten up the prince. They believed that Feng Wu was the culprit here. Everyone was dumbfounded. They stared at the teenage girl, in disbelief, and couldn't believe how violent she was. She was no more than 14 years old, but she jumped so high, and her punches were relentless. That was the prince who wanted to marry her. How could she bring herself to do this? Ranmil was the first to react, and her eyes widened in surprise. It had never occurred to her that Feng Wu would use such a way to solve her problem. It was straightforward but effective. However, such an opportunity wouldn't appear every day, so of course, Ranmil wouldn't give in just yet. Therefore, she tugged at Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu reacted immediately and shouted angrily, "That's enough. Take Feng Wu down." Instantly, 2 of his 4 guards stepped out and charged at Feng Wu. However, when they almost touched Feng Wu's arms, Jun Linyuan looked at them with frightening eyes, and they felt their hearts stop. Being Emperor Wu's guards, the 2 men had to be very capable. Their cultivation levels should be much higher than Feng Wu's. But strangely, when Feng Wu glanced at them with her cold eyes, they involuntarily froze. The 2 guards looked at each other uneasily. For a split second, they thought that they were seeing the crown prince's eyes. That was so frightening. Back off. Given Jun Linyuan's intimidating demeanor, the 2 guards backed away before they realized what they were doing. Take her down, Emperor Wu shouted angrily. He decided that the girl was mimicking Jun Linyuan and had done a very good job, but it only made him even more furious. Chapter 2102. It's outrageous. Chapter 2102. It's outrageous. How dare you? Jun Linyuan said arrogantly. He was ready to fight. His demeanor made many people uneasy. Master Zhua and Master Duga looked at each other. Master Duga murmured, "Since when has Feng Wu been so intimidating?" "She's bluffing." Master Zhua snorted. Master Duga glanced at him. "And she's good enough to fool both of us." Master Zhua didn't know what to say. Master Duga said, "Although her cultivation level is still the same, her demeanor reminds me of an invincible sword. We have to admit that she's going to be great one day." Master Zhua clenched his fists. Master Duga was right. He couldn't fool himself anymore. At the thought of Zhua Qingxian and Zhua Qingyu, Master Zhua was filled with hatred. Feng Wu had to die. At the same time, Feng Wu sighed in resignation. She tugged at the proud crown prince's sleeve and said, "Calm down. Don't be mad." Was the crown prince appeasing Feng Wu now? Exactly what did he see in her? Everyone watched in disbelief. But to their surprise, Feng Wu didn't show any gratitude. Rather, she behaved even worse. She threw off the crown prince's hand. OMG! Everyone was shocked by Feng Wu's willfulness. This girl was the boldest person they had ever seen. Did she have a death wish? At the same time, Feng Wu held Jun Linyuan's arm and tried to appease him. "Your Royal Highness, didn't you agree that you would behave yourself?" She caressed the back of his hand, trying to calm him down. "As I said, I'll owe you one, So please help me. Please. You're the best. Feng Wu was great at these things because she had practiced them on her beautiful master. She didn't even need to warm up. Luckily, Feng Wu had whispered those words to Jun Linyuan. If anyone else heard what she said, Jun Linyuan's image would be ruined instantly. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu gave him a grin in return. The crown prince looked at her in resignation. Just this once. Feng Wu was so happy that if she had a tail, it would be wagging now. Just this once. Jun Linyuan snorted reluctantly and put his hands behind his back. He resumed his indifferent demeanor, which to other people was a sign of her arrogance. But to Jun Linyuan, he felt that he had never been so humble. If Feng Wu hadn't pleaded, the crown prince shot a cold glance at the younger prince. Poor prince. He had wanted to make a marriage proposal, but his dream girl had beaten him up. That had to be a first. Ranmil wouldn't stand for such humiliation. Chapter 2103, Outrageous. Chapter 2103, Outrageous. Of course, Ranmil wouldn't allow Feng Wu to look so arrogant. She felt like she had been slapped in the face. At that thought, Ranmil frowned and said, Princess Feng Wu, I don't think I can agree with what you've done. Before Jun Linyuan could say anything, Feng Wu spoke up. She said, What? Ranmil looked at her and said, Your Royal Highness, are you on Princess Feng Wu's side then? Of course I'm on my side, Feng Wu thought. She nodded, which infuriated Ranmil. Ranmil gritted her teeth. Fine. If your Royal Highness doesn't care about your woman's chastity, why should we? Was she going to incriminate Feng Wu? Feng Wu couldn't let her do that, so she stepped forward, stared at Ranmil and asked, Princess Ranmil, are you sure that Feng Wu gave your brother her consent? Ranmil smirked. I believe my brother. Feng Wu snorted. But I believe Feng Wu. You, Ranmil was rendered speechless. Although she claimed that she didn't like Jun Linyuan anymore, her actions weren't convincing. She hadn't moved on. Instead, she was obsessed with taking revenge. Because of that, when she saw Jun Linyuan turn against her for Feng Wu, she was even more furious and heartbroken. But she had no idea that she was in fact arguing with Feng Wu. Ranmil stared at Feng Wu. So what if you believe her? We need proof. Feng Wu chuckled and crossed her hands. Proof? I'm her proof. Ranmil glared at Jun Linyuan. What do you mean? Feng Wu said. Who has known Feng Wu for longer? Me or this prince? Everyone looked at the beaten-up prince and felt that he had made the worst choice. Why would he try to compete with the crown prince over a woman? Ranmil said. So what? She wouldn't accept this. Why was this even happening? Why would the unapproachable crown prince support Feng Wu now? It was so frustrating. Feng Wu had no idea how Ranmil felt. She only looked at her and snorted. Given the choice, who would you choose, me or my father? Ranmil's gaze was fixed on Jun Linyuan. That was an outrageous question. How could he ask such a thing? Jun Linyuan said. If I accept you as a consort and take you away as long as you say yes, will you come? Wow. Everyone was astonished. Oh God. No one saw that coming. They never expected the crown prince to be so bold. Ranmil had slept with Emperor Wu already, and was the emperor's consort Ranmil. Technically speaking, she was Jun Linyuan's stepmother now. That was incredible. The continent was quite open about such things, but this was still unheard of. However, Ranmil had confessed her love for Jun Linyuan first before sleeping with Emperor Wu, which proved that she wasn't that faithful. The looks the other people gave her changed. Chapter 2104. Do you think Feng Wu is blind? Chapter 2104. Do you think Feng Wu is blind? Emperor Wu's face turned livid, and he almost fainted. That defiant son. But now, everyone was looking at Ranmil. She didn't lose her temper, or decline the offer immediately. Rather, she was hesitating. She was considering the offer. Oh God. That was what infuriated Emperor Wu the most. Looking around, Feng Wu saw the astonished crowd, the furious Emperor Wu, and the hesitant Ranmil. Human beings were such complicated animals. Why? Ranmil started to say but was cut off. Feng Wu said, "Of course, it's only a hypothesis." A hypothesis? Ranmil wanted to slap Jun Linyuan. She had been so close to saying that she would go with him. Luckily, she was stopped mid-sentence. She was consort Ranmil, Emperor Wu's woman. She could never marry Jun Linyuan. What she didn't notice was that Feng Wu had set her up. Emperor Wu had seen Ranmil's hesitation. Because of Ranmil's enchanting body, Emperor Wu might like her more and more in the future. But now, Feng Wu had planted a seed of distrust in his heart. It was easy for all kings and emperors to distrust others. The more he liked Ranmil, the more doubts he would have about her. Therefore, he would dote on Ranmil, but he would never trust her. Poor Ranmil. She hadn't realized that Feng Wu had ruined her future. Of course, she was too jealous of Feng Wu right now to see things clearly. Feng Wu smiled at Ranmil. "Princess, you've given your answer, haven't you?" Ranmil glared at her. "No, I didn't say anything." Feng Wu chuckled. "Of course you did. You confessed your love for me first. After I turned you down, you chose His Majesty instead. Isn't it obvious?" Ranmil was so furious. So was Emperor Wu. He thought he was going to pass out. Feng Wu smirked. "Even if you wanted to choose me, do you think Feng Wu is blind? Why would she choose another man instead of me?" "Ranmil, don't take other people to be idiots." The questions made Ranmil's face turn scarlet red. She stared at Jun Linyuan and said, "Maybe she's trying to use my brother as her plan B, in case she can't marry your Royal Highness." Feng Wu snorted. "Princess, do you think that we're all as stupid as you are? Don't you know that Feng Wu and I are still engaged?" Feng Wu then glanced at Ranmil and shook her head. "Princess, do you ever use your brain?" Wow. Everyone's eyes widened, and they held their breaths. When the crown prince lost his temper, no one could withstand his rage. The humiliation made Ranmil want to hide in a cave. Feng Wu then turned to lead Jun Linyuan away. After taking a few steps, she turned around and stared at Emperor Wu. "Father, are you sure you want to take such a stupid woman back to the imperial capital?" Ranmil was almost in tears. Once Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan had said everything there was to say, they left together. Chapter 2105. My Dearest Crown Prince. Chapter 2105. My Dearest Crown Prince. The people looked at one another in bewilderment. No one knew what to say. Did the emperor bring his Royal Highness, and Feng Wu here only to be humiliated? Why? The younger prince was still in shock. He had been crying since Feng Wu beat him up. He couldn't understand. Feng Wu hadn't been so scary before. Ranmil threw a dirty look at her brother. The thought of what she had gone through made her want to scream. Since Jun Linyuan had given her no hope, Ranmil focused on Emperor Wu instead. However, when she tried to hold Emperor Wu's arm, the emperor, who had been affectionate before, brushed her hand off and walked away. All the officials left with him, leaving Ranmil behind. "Ranmil!" The chieftain wanted to say something, but hesitated. Ranmil bit her lip and clenched her fists. "Father, don't worry. I can handle Emperor Wu. I remember what I need to do. The imperial capital is worlds away, and your life in the royal palace won't be easy. The Sinnoh grassland is counting on you. Father, I promise you, one day the entire grassland will be ours." Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan went back to their carriage. Feng Wu sat down and let out a breath of relief. Jun Linyuan had walked so fast that she almost couldn't catch up with him. A few times they were almost over 10 steps apart. That was close. She looked at Jun Linyuan with a grin. "What are you smiling at me for?" Jun Linyuan glanced at her. "You look fishy." Feng Wu smacked him on the shoulder. "Who are you calling fishy?" Jun Linyuan ignored her and turned to look out the window. The carriage had already started moving, and the view outside was quite pleasant. He knew that the girl would soon come to talk to him. As expected, before long, Feng Wu gave him a little nudge. He pretended that he didn't see her, and kept looking out the window, as if he was drawn to the view. Hey hey! Seeing that Jun Linyuan wouldn't reply, Feng Wu grew anxious. She ran to the other side, so that Jun Linyuan had to look at her. What? The crown prince sounded annoyed. Feng Wu said, I need to talk to you. Jun Linyuan said, No. Feng Wu said, I haven't said anything yet. The crown prince said, It won't be anything good. Feng Wu punched him lightly on the shoulder. Why do you say that? I haven't told you what it's about yet. Jun Linyuan, you have to listen to me. Jun Linyuan said in annoyance, You're such a troublemaker. Feng Wu took a deep breath and forced a smile. My dearest crown prince, please hear me out, all right? She knew that Jun Linyuan would say yes if she asked nicely. As expected, the impatient look gradually faded from Jun Linyuan's face, and he was about to speak. Chapter 2106. You want to sleep in the same room as Boss Jun. Chapter 2106. You want to sleep in the same room as Boss Jun, Boss Jun, Boss Jun. There was a familiar voice. Feng Wu cried out inwardly. Feng Sun was coming. Boss Jun, we're arriving at a courier station. I've had your room cleaned, and there's hot water inside. You can freshen up right away. Feng Sun grinned at Feng Wu from outside the window, ready to be praised. If he had a tail, it would be wagging non-stop right now. Feng Wu wanted to smack him on the head. She was so close to getting Jun Linyuan to agree to play the game, and to tie the two of them together with a transparent rope. But Feng Sun had ruined everything. Why, little Feng Wu, you're here too. Feng Sun looked at Jun Linyuan and tried to take him away. Come with me. I need to talk to you. As he spoke, Feng Sun put a hand on Jun Linyuan's shoulder, trying to drag him away. However, the crown prince hated other people touching him, so he looked sharply at Feng Sun. WTF. The look made Feng Sun jump, and he drew back his hand involuntarily. What? Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Sun. Since Feng Sun was his best childhood friend, the crown prince was relatively nice to him. Feng Sun cleared his throat and murmured, Why do I feel like Boss Jun is staring at me? Am I daydreaming? Meanwhile, the real crown prince was giving him a you idiot look. Little Feng Wu, come here. I have something serious to tell you. Feng Sun remembered what he wanted to do. The crown prince wasn't interested until Feng Sun said, It's about your reputation. Jun Linyuan frowned. If that was the case, he was indeed intrigued. Feng Sun took Jun Linyuan to a quiet corner. Seeing that Jun Linyuan was walking toward them, he gestured for him to stop. Stop. Boss Jun, I've always listened to you, but now, you have to listen to me. This is a private matter between me and my sister. Boss Jun, don't eavesdrop. Feng Wu looked at Feng Sun in resignation. What did he want to do now? Feng Sun's attitude made Feng Wu a little uneasy. Because every time Feng Sun tried to help, he ended up giving her more trouble than she already had. Therefore, she stepped forward trying to soothe Feng Sun. Feng. However, as soon as she started talking, Xianni stopped her. Boss Jun, I need to talk to you. Feng Wu was a little speechless when she saw the silent and prim teenager standing in front of her. But she had to admit that hearing him call her boss felt really good. Boss Jun, I need to talk to you, Xianni repeated. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Fine. Go ahead. But all of Feng Wu's attention was on Feng Sun. She didn't know if he would make trouble for her again. Her hunch was accurate. Feng Sun pulled Jun Linyuan to a corner and said seriously, Xiao Wu, do you know that you've made a terrible mistake? The crown prince narrowed his eyes and glanced at Feng Sun. Feng Sun snorted. You're going to sleep in the same room as Boss Jun. Feng Wu, are you an idiot? Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes further. Chapter 2107 Untitled. Chapter 2107, Untitled. However, Feng Sun was too absorbed in his own thoughts to notice the oncoming storm. He jabbed Feng Wu in the temple and gritted his teeth. You make me so mad. The crown prince had never been jabbed in the temple before. He brushed off Feng Sun's hand. Feng Sun didn't realize how strong Feng Wu had become. He only stared at her and said in frustration, Do you know what that kind of behavior will do to a girl? You're not married yet. Your reputation will be ruined. Jun Linyuan had a brooding look in his eyes. Feng Sun went on babbling for a while before he reached the conclusion. Anyway, you need to marry His Royal Highness as soon as possible. Otherwise, you'll have a lot to lose. The Crown Prince glanced at Feng Sun and walked away. What's that look on your face? I'm so mad, Feng Sun said in frustration. The courier station wasn't big, and there were a lot of people. In the end, only the royal family and the high-ranking officials could spend the night inside. The rest had to set up tents around the station. After they settled in, naturally, Feng Wu ran into Jun Linyuan's room. Of course she had to. With the 9th trial, Feng Wu couldn't stay more than 10 steps away from Jun Linyuan. And nothing was more important than completing that trial. Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu but didn't say a thing. Feng Wu asked, "What?" The Crown Prince wanted to say something, but hesitated. Feng Wu quickly set up her bed on the floor. She then asked Jun Linyuan in bewilderment, "What did Feng Sun say?" The Crown Prince shook his head. "Nothing." Feng Wu was curious. "If that's the case, why do you look so preoccupied? He must have said something to you. Just tell me. I'm not that fragile. I can take it." The Crown Prince looked at her for a moment and suddenly said, "You should go back to your own room." "What?" Feng Wu stared at him in disbelief, then narrowed her eyes. "What did you say?" "Go back." Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu was angry. When she didn't want to be around him, he did all he could to trap her. But now, when she had to stick around because of the 9th trial, his attitude changed completely. Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan also looked back at Feng Wu. Humph. Feng Wu rose to her feet and headed for the door, but she walked very slowly. She was sure that Jun Linyuan would stop her. But to her frustration, she was about 10 steps away, but Jun Linyuan still hadn't said a thing. In fact, the Crown Prince was thinking along the same lines as Feng Wu. He felt at quite a loss when Feng Wu walked away, as if a hole had opened up in his chest. He opened his mouth. But he wondered if it would weaken his authority if he stopped her. He decided that he would stop her after she took the 11th step. Hence, while Feng Wu waited for him to stop her, he was waiting for her to take one more step. It was a stalemate. The atmosphere grew rather awkward. Anyone else might not have been able to stand it, but not Feng Wu. She was great at enduring awkwardness. Chapter 2108, Untitled. Chapter 2108, Untitled. Feng Wu turned around, walked back to Jun Linyuan, and sat down. "Why are you back?" the Crown Prince asked with a frown. He wanted to smile, but he forced himself to look reluctant. That was just what he would do. Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan with a smirk on her face. "Your Royal Highness, haven't you forgotten something very important?" As she spoke, she lay on the bed on the floor, rested her head on her hands, and crossed her legs. She looked very relaxed. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu suspiciously. Feng Wu patted her chest and said proudly, "I'm Jun Linyuan now. If you want to leave, be my guest. I'm not leaving this room." Jun Linyuan stared at her. She grinned. "You don't scare me." Jun Linyuan was speechless. But he had to admit that with the girl around, he slept much better. He frowned, rose to his feet, and seemed about to head for the door. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. No. What was the point in staying here if Jun Linyuan left this room? She had to stay within 10 steps of him. What happened next was quicker than words could describe. With a whoosh, she ran past Jun Linyuan. Looking up, Jun Linyuan saw that Feng Wu had jumped onto the bed and wrapped the blanket around her. Only her head was left outside. "Please don't leave." Her eyes glistened, and the look in them was very innocent. That look, it could melt any heart. Jun Linyuan had never wanted to leave, and seeing Feng Wu like this only convinced him to stay. But he wasn't good at expressing his emotions, so he waved at her and said, "Go to bed." Yes. He thought he saw a bright, happy smile on Feng Wu's face. Yes, it was a bright smile. As for happiness, he had probably imagined it. Before they put out the lamp, thump, the door was kicked open, and someone rushed into the room. Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu bolted up. Jun Linyuan quickly stood behind Feng Wu. But it was too late. The intruders had spotted him. The Empress Dowager saw her as soon as she stepped into the room. Feng Wu, how dare you? The Empress Dowager pointed at Feng Wu. Of course, she was in fact pointing at the Crown Prince. Although Jun Linyuan seldom showed emotions, she was still his grandmother, so he stepped forward and said, Grandma. Shut up. Who gave you permission to call me that? I'm not your grandmother. You're not a part of the family. Don't flatter yourself. The Empress Dowager scolded Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu laughed inwardly. She was glad to see Jun Linyuan, whom the Empress Dowager doted on, get told off. And you? However, the Empress Dowager saw her grin and turned to lash out at her in frustration. Jun Linyuan, have you lost your mind? How can you do such a thing? The Empress Dowager said angrily. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. What did she do? Grandma, please don't be mad. What did I do? Feng Wu spoke like a loving grandson. Chapter 2109 Untitled. Chapter 2109, Untitled. The Empress Dowager glared at Feng Wu. Don't you know what you've done? Feng Wu smiled wryly. Grandmother, please tell me what I did wrong. That infuriated the Empress Dowager again. Jun Linyuan, are you really that stupid? Have you forgotten who you are? You're the Crown Prince, and you'll rule the Jumwa Empire one day. What are you doing? You don't care about your health at all. You're sleeping on the ground and letting the girls sleep on the bed. Have you lost your mind? The Empress Dowager jabbed Feng Wu's forehead with a finger. She's the maid. She should be looking after you and sleeping on the ground. Use your brain. The Empress Dowager wouldn't stop scolding Jun Linyuan, and he could only listen. Feng Wu saw his face turn dark. She couldn't help but chuckle. Why are you smiling? Stop it. The old lady hit Feng Wu's, but with her walking stick. You're such a fool. That girl is making you forget who you are. Feng Wu said, Grandmother, please don't be mad. You'll give yourself a headache. The Empress Dowager said, If I die, you're to blame. Gosh, my head. The Empress Dowager felt dizzy. Feng Wu immediately helped the old lady sit down. She checked her pulse and said, Your Majesty, you need to calm down. You're stressing yourself out. I'm stressed out because of you. The Empress Dowager thumped her walking stick on the ground and glared at Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu asked, What's wrong? The Empress Dowager said, Don't you know? That Ranmil is no kitten. I've been watching her. Your father was mad at her before we set out. But the two of them did something in the carriage. And when they got out, your father looked refreshed. Plus, he was holding Consort Ranmil's hand. Feng Wu said, That's impressive. The Empress Dowager glared at Feng Wu. Do you know where Consort Ranmil is now? Feng Wu asked where. The Empress Dowager said angrily, She's gone to the Empress. That woman has been losing ground, and her son is nothing compared with you. Her side was going to be doomed, but then, this Ranmil showed up. One look and you know that she's a tough one. She used to like you, but now she's with the Emperor. What a foolish son I have. But you're the one to blame. If you had accepted her, she would never have had the chance to obtain your father's favor or join hands with the Empress. Of course you're perfect. It's all her fault. The Empress Dowager complained to Feng Wu. Ahem, Grandma, it's not like that. Feng Wu helped the Empress Dowager sit down and said patiently, Grandma, that Ranmil confessed her love for me first, but when I turned her down, she immediately went to my father. That kind of woman. The Empress Dowager smacked the table. You're right. She's not good enough for you. Feng Wu sighed. Grandma, just think about it. Would that woman stay faithful if I married her? Chapter 2110 Untitled. Chapter 2110 Untitled. The Empress Dowager said, She wouldn't dare. Feng Wu sighed. Grandma, you know what Ranmil is like. Although she's my father's consort Ranmil now, she still has feelings for me. The Empress Dowager was furious. That woman is a disaster. Feng Wu shrugged. She knows the fierce-faced dance and has an enchanting body. Of course my father adores her. The Empress Dowager said angrily, Your father is a fool. I'll break his legs if he doesn't listen to me. Feng Wu chuckled inwardly. Ranmil wouldn't leave her alone, but she didn't have the time to handle Ranmil. However, she had prepared a lot of traps for Ranmil in advance. She was curious to know if Ranmil could win the Empress Dowager over. It wouldn't be easy, because Jun Linyuan had made it clear that he and Ranmil were at daggers drawn. He was the Empress Dowager's favorite grandson, and she was the bad woman who wanted both the son and the father. It didn't take a genius to figure out which side the Empress Dowager would be on. The Empress Dowager rose to her feet. I'd like to see what the Emperor will say. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan looked at each other, and were glad that the old lady was leaving. However, the Empress Dowager suddenly turned around and gave Jun Linyuan a threatening look. You're a maid. Behave like one, said the Empress Dowager. But Feng Wu was in fact the proud Jun Linyuan. Of course he wouldn't behave like a humble maid. Therefore, Feng Wu stepped forward and blocked Jun Linyuan's view. She then smiled at the Empress Dowager. Of course, I'm sure she knows that. The Empress Dowager said angrily, You're indulging her, and she's spoiled. How can she let you sleep on the floor? After that, the Empress Dowager glared at Jun Linyuan. If I see that happening one more time, I'm going to sell you off. Feng Wu cleared her throat. What the Empress Dowager said made her heart skip a beat. Luckily, Jun Linyuan hadn't lost his temper yet. But if the Empress Dowager still wouldn't leave, Feng Wu immediately took the Empress Dowager's hand and led her toward the door. It's dark and slippery outside. Granny Lan, be careful on your way back. Don't let the Empress Dowager fall. The Empress Dowager told Feng Wu, that maid is impossible. She doesn't understand her role. In the end, you'll be maltreated. So, Feng Wu's stomach lurched. And she had a very bad feeling. The Empress Dowager told Granny Lan, send 2 disciplinary grannies here tomorrow. Feng Wu needs to learn the rules and how to serve her master. She left after that. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Oh God. Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan. As expected, his face was very dark. Feng Wu said, Don't take her too seriously. I won't let those nannies do anything to you. I'm not someone who would do something like that at all. Feng Wu, do you have some misconception about me? The Crown Prince glanced at Feng Wu. Chapter 2111 Revival List. Chapter 2111 Revival List. Feng Wu asked, What? Jun Linyuan said, Do you think a couple of disciplinary nannies can do anything to me? Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Just then they heard a thump. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan exchanged a look. Feng Wu said, That was loud. I think it came from His Majesty's room. Emperor Wu lived in the largest courtyard in the center, whereas Jun Linyuan's room was in the east. Therefore, it sounded to them like the thump had come from the west. Jun Linyuan said, Go to bed. Just then they heard running footsteps as well. The fairy suddenly stuck her head out and cried out. Feng Wu patted her head. Be quiet. Luckily, she and the fairy could communicate with their minds. Because Feng Wu's cultivation level wasn't very high, Jun Linyuan couldn't sense the fairy and the 12 trials yet, nor had he noticed her beautiful master. The fairy looked very anxious. Feng Wu grew uneasy and asked, What? Well, the 10th trial was just activated, the fairy stammered. The 10th trial? Feng Wu frowned. Aren't I still on the 9th trial? Why is there a new one already? The 9th trial required Feng Wu to stay within 10 steps of Jun Linyuan. The fairy sounded very helpless. I have no idea. Feng Wu said, Fine. What's the 10th trial then? The fairy gave her a strange look. Feng Wu suddenly had a bad feeling. Tell me. The fairy said, Find the Dongseng Kingdom's revival list and eliminate everyone on it. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. First of all, what's a revival list? The fairy looked at Feng Wu and shook her head. Feng Wu was surprised. You don't know either? The fairy shook her head. No, I don't. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Is there a time limit then? The fairy shook her head. No. Feng Wu rubbed her chin. That makes sense. A time limit would make it impossible to finish this trial. The Dongseng Kingdom's revival list. Where do I begin? And why was the 10th trial suddenly triggered? I haven't finished the 9th trial yet. Did something happen just then? Feng Wu racked her brain for an answer. Suddenly she heard Feng's voice. There was an assassination attempt on His Majesty. The attackers were from the Dongseng Kingdom. What? Feng Wu smacked her head. The Dongseng Kingdom? The revival list. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. The 10th trial was triggered when the Dongseng Kingdom tried to assassinate Emperor Wu. Was there a connection? At that thought, Feng Wu rose to her feet. And she pulled Jun Linyuan up as well. Jun Linyuan had sat down on the bed, trying to repair Feng Wu's body, but was interrupted. He frowned at her. Feng Wu chuckled. Shall we go visit your father? Chapter 21:12, The Dongseng Kingdom. Chapter 21:12, The Dongseng Kingdom. Jun Linyuan said. He's protected by so many people. He'll live. I'm not going. Feng Wu thought. If you don't go, I can't go. What about my 10th trial? Hence, Feng Wu gave Jun Linyuan a pleading look. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu in resignation. Do you really want to go so badly? Feng Wu said. Yes. Having no other choice, Jun Linyuan had to go with her. In the middle courtyard where Emperor Wu lived, Empress Dugu was keeping Emperor Wu company, and the atmosphere was quite subdued. The floor was covered with broken cups, shattered chairs, and a screen that had been knocked over. It was a mess. Father. Seeing Emperor Wu's dark face, Feng Wu frowned and asked Gong Shuji, the captain of Emperor Wu's guards. What happened? Gong Shuji said solemnly. 10 men in black cloaks were waiting inside the courier station when we arrived. They were very good at hiding, and our men didn't notice them. His voice was filled with frustration. We were caught off guard when they attacked. They were so fast that there was little we could do. Emperor Wu steadied Empress Dugu and said, I have to thank the Empress. If she hadn't warned me and shielded me with her own body. It seemed that Empress Dugu was injured. Blood soaked the cloth over her shoulder. That attack had been aimed at Emperor Wu's heart. So, Empress Dugu had indeed saved the emperor. Feng Wu couldn't help but look at Empress Dugu. She was impressed. The day before, Empress Dugu had been furious about what happened between Emperor Wu and Ranmil, and she looked like she wanted to run away from her husband. But it only took her one day to calm down, and now, she was already trying to win Emperor Wu back. This woman was a chameleon. Feng Wu glanced at Empress Dugu before asking, Are you sure that the assassins were from the Dongseng Kingdom? Gong Shuji nodded. Their great concealment skills are enough to prove that they're ninjas from the Dongseng Kingdom. We checked the calluses on the hands of the dead bodies. It's obvious that they usually wield katanas. Therefore, I'm sure that the assassins were from the Dongseng Kingdom. Emperor Wu said angrily. Are they going to revolt again? Everyone fell silent. The entire Zhenhua Empire knew how savage the Dongseng Kingdom was. They had committed heinous crimes in the Zhenhua Empire 13 years ago. Dongseng Kingdom was less than 1/10 of the size of the Zhenhua Empire. However, the Dongseng Kingdom was very powerful. They had too little land and too many people. They experienced constant natural disasters and took death more lightly than the people of other countries. They had a sense of national cohesion that united them and enabled them to fight as one. No matter how large their population was, if they didn't work together, they wouldn't be able to achieve anything. However, a few people working together could become a formidable force. 13 years ago, the Dongseng Kingdom was driven by such a force and tore through the defense line of the Zhenhua Empire. After that, they quickly reached every corner of the empire. Chapter 21:13 Feud. Chapter 21:13 Feud. The Dongseng Kingdom's cavalry ran wild in the Zhenhua Empire and committed many unspeakable crimes. The entire empire was dragged into the war and was on the verge of a total collapse. Fortunately, a capable hero led the army and chased the men of the Dongseng Kingdom out of the Zhenhua Empire. However, it didn't change the fact that it was a humiliating past for the empire. Emperor Wu forbade anyone from recording this part of history, hoping that the people would forget about it. Naturally, the imperial censor disagreed. He killed himself in court in order to try and stop the emperor. But Emperor Wu was stubborn and refused to listen to anyone. He insisted that the war should be omitted from historical records and never mentioned again. Gradually, everyone forgot about it. Children younger than 13 had never experienced the war and knew little about it. For instance, Feng Wu only had a rough idea. She knew that a great master helped the empire end the war. But no one ever mentioned who the master was. After performing such a great achievement, the people shouldn't forget this person. Feng Wu wanted to ask who the person was, but she was playing Jun Linyuan now. Of course, Jun Linyuan should know the person's name, so she had to keep the question to herself until she got back to her room. However, what Emperor Wu said next answered her question. Back then, Master Ling Hu single-handedly killed the enemy leader, and the Dongxing army admitted defeat. After that, they signed a treaty that was to our benefit. Feng Wu was surprised. Master Ling Hu? Wasn't he the old monk of Wandering Temple? Feng Wu was very familiar with that name. She had to finish the 12 trials of love because of that master. So it was him. That's why people respect the old monk so much, including Emperor Wu and the Empress Dowager, thought Feng Wu. That old man had done so much for the empire. But Master Ling Hu said that he can't do this forever. He owed my grandfather a favor, and because of that he killed the enemy leader. Now that we're even, he won't do anything if war breaks out again, said Jun Linyuan casually. Emperor Wu exploded. He glared at Feng Wu and shouted, "Why do you know that?" It was classified information. No more than 10 people knew the secret, and they were all close to Emperor Wu. If the Dongxing kingdom knew about this, they would invade the empire again. Jun Linyuan, how could you tell her? Emperor Wu was furious. Are you really going to marry her? Have you forgotten your agreement with Swordsmanship? What? Of all the things Emperor Wu said, Feng Wu only heard the last part. Jun Linyuan and Swordsmanship had an agreement? What was it? She gave Jun Linyuan a confused look, but Jun Linyuan didn't seem to want to answer her question. Ahem. He cleared his throat. Things kept happening after they left the tombs, and he didn't have time to properly repair Feng Wu's body. Because of that, he would still cough from time to time. Luckily, he had repaired 30%, which was enough to keep Feng Wu alive. Chapter 2114 Untitled. Chapter 2114 Untitled. However, at that moment, a young eunuch came in to serve the tea. He was called Qiu, and had been doing this job for a very long time. After serving the tea, he turned to leave the room. Something happened when he walked past Jun Linyuan. He suddenly smashed the teapot onto Jun Linyuan's back. Jun Linyuan was using Feng Wu's body, which he had only repaired by 30%. No one had expected the young eunuch to be a martial arts practitioner. Moreover, he was great at hiding his skills. Jun Linyuan shifted to the side, barely evading the attack. Feng Wu reacted in time and punched the eunuch. Thump. Qiu's head was smashed into a pulp. Wow. Everyone stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Oh God, that was such terrifying power. The crown prince was as formidable as rumored. Seeing the dead body, even Empress Dugu was impressed. Caught off guard, Feng Wu didn't control her power. While killing Qiu, she almost brought the courier station to the ground. The ceiling trembled and rubble fell. But she couldn't care less about the building. Where was Jun Linyuan? Normally, she wouldn't worry about Jun Linyuan, but he was using her body now, and her cultivation level wasn't high enough to protect him. Looking around, Feng Wu saw that Jun Linyuan was being held by a person that was moving very fast. It seemed that Jun Linyuan had been knocked out. Don't! Feng Wu was about to go after them, when Emperor Wu stopped her. Have you lost your mind? Stop right there. They're from the Dongxing kingdom, and are great at using tricks. They've taken Feng Wu to lure you out. It's a trap. That Feng Wu is just a maid. You can't risk your life for her. Of course, Emperor Wu wouldn't want his son to take the risk. Feng Wu was furious. Emperor Wu had no idea that Feng Wu was his son, No matter how advanced his original level was, he couldn't use any of his skills now. At that thought, Feng Wu shoved Emperor Wu to the side and said, "I'm going to save her." Emperor Wu stumbled. The next second, Feng Wu disappeared from sight. That defiant son. Emperor Wu slapped his hand down on the table. Did this defiant son think that he could do anything just because he was a capable fighter? Protect the crown prince. Emperor Wu glanced at Gong Shuji. Hearing that, Gong Shuji immediately dashed off with his elite soldiers. Feng Wu kept her gaze on the man ahead of her and ran as fast as she could. Whoosh, 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 because it was Jun Lingyuan's power, and Feng Wu wasn't used to it yet. She was almost flung away several times whenever she turned a corner. There was a thick forest up ahead. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes in an intimidating way. Once inside, her view would be hindered. Moreover, she couldn't master this power yet, and it would be very disadvantageous for her. However, to the ninjas of the Dongseng Kingdom, the forest was the best place for them to hide. Feng Wu was a little frustrated. If it was the real Jun Lingyuan, he would have caught the enemy already. Chapter 21:15 Jun Lingyuan was snatched. Chapter 21:15 Jun Lingyuan was snatched. Right now, Feng Wu couldn't control Jun Lingyuan's great power. It was like owning a great fortune, but only being able to use one coin at a time. Feng Wu was so frustrated. She swore that once this was over, she would use all her time to train herself, so that she could master this power. If the Dongseng Kingdom heard about this weakening of Jun Lingyuan's power, they would try to assassinate him. That would be dangerous. Just then the ninja disappeared. Where did he go? On guard, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Right now, she had even forgotten about the 9th trial, and the fact that she had to stay within 10 steps of Jun Lingyuan. At that moment she heard a loud explosion. It was 500 meters to the northeast. Without thinking, Feng Wu dashed off. She reached the site in a split second. Jun Lingyuan was leaning against a slope, and opposite him was the ninja, who had been severely injured by the explosion. Kill him. Jun Lingyuan was covered by wounds, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. However, his tone remained authoritative. Without thinking, Feng Wu charged at the ninja. She drew out Sky Destroyer. The ninja's pupils contracted. He was doomed. The crown prince of the Zhenwu Empire was said to be the most formidable cultivator on this continent. The ninja knew that he wouldn't be able to withstand the attack. However, men of the Dongseng Kingdom never surrendered. Therefore, the ninja still raised his sword, even though he knew that he would be killed. Seeing the way Feng Wu struck out, Jun Lingyuan frowned. And he was right to do so. The two swords met in midair. Thump! The strike sent the ninja flying backward. He smashed into the mountain wall, destroying half of it. Feng Wu didn't notice anything different, but Jun Lingyuan's face darkened. And he was right to do so. The ninja struggled to his feet and stared at Feng Wu. His eyes were filled with confusion, but he also looked pleasantly surprised. "Are you really the crown prince?" he asked in a deep voice. Feng Wu didn't know what gave her away, but she wouldn't give in. She glared at the ninja. "I see. The crown prince of the Zhenwu Empire hasn't even mastered the power of the primary stage yet." Ha 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 ha. The ninja sounded happy. Feng Wu frowned and wondered what had given her away. But before she could ask anything, the ninja dashed off. She had a bad feeling and wanted to go after him. "Stop." Jun Lingyuan coughed violently and almost spat out blood. Feng Wu immediately ran back to Jun Lingyuan and stuffed some pills into his mouth. She then checked his pulse. "You're badly injured. That 30% you repaired has gone to waste. How do you feel?" Jun Lingyuan said, "I'll live." Feng Wu asked, "Why didn't you let me kill him? He'll be a huge problem for us in the future." "He must have." Jun Lingyuan asked. "He must have what?" Feng Wu said, "He must have noticed something different about you. Judging by his tone, he was happy about it. Is it possible that I'll become their target?" Chapter 21:16 Failed the 9th trial? Chapter 21:16 Failed the ninth trial? After the war 13 years ago, the Jumwa Empire had been keeping a low profile. It was because of Jun Linyuan that the empire gained fame again. Compared with assassinating Emperor Wu, they would rather kill Jun Linyuan. Your body will be in danger. Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan. The crown prince said, I know. Feng Wu took his hands. Aren't you worried? Jun Linyuan smiled but didn't say anything. Feng Wu asked, what's the primary stage? Why did that ninja notice the difference? Jun Linyuan said, you're too far below that stage now, and it won't do you any good to know too much. As for why he noticed it, he glanced at Feng Wu, but before he could say anything, he was caught in a fit of coughing again. Feng Wu immediately steadied him. Your lungs are injured. You shouldn't be talking. The crown prince shook his head. Because your energy is everywhere when you strike out. But powerful people like me can concentrate their power to a single point. It's still too early to tell you how to do that. Suddenly, white wild geese flew into the sky. Jun Linyuan looked at the birds and shook his head. Your worry has just come true. Feng Wu asked, what? Jun Linyuan pointed at the wild geese and said, that's sign language used by the Dongseng Kingdom. They're sending a signal. Feng Wu had a bad feeling. What signal? Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu. Assassinate the crown prince. Feng Wu asked, what? Her prediction was right. Feng Wu said, Jun Linyuan waved at her. I anticipated this when I switched bodies with you. There's no need for you to worry about anything. Feng Wu looked perplexed. Feng Wu thought that she was farsighted and prudent, but as it turned out, Jun Linyuan was even more so. Feng Wu suddenly remembered something, and she cried out. Jun Linyuan was perplexed. Feng Wu suddenly remembered the fairy. Because I was more than 10 steps away from Jun Linyuan when I came out to chase the ninja, wasn't I? The fairy said, yes. Feng Wu's eyes widened, and blue veins popped on her forehead. Have I failed the trial? Feng Wu was so frustrated that she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her broken star piece, her beautiful master. Feng Wu felt that she had been struck by lightning, and she thought that her head was going to explode. Her ears were buzzing so loudly that she almost passed out. Jun Linyuan's pupils contracted. What was wrong with her? Luckily the fairy said, hey, calm down. You didn't fail. Seeing that Feng Wu didn't respond, the fairy raised her voice. I'm here, aren't I? That means that you haven't failed the 12 trials of love. You can still find the broken star piece. Wake up. For a moment, the fairy thought that Feng Wu's soul was going to leave her body. Chapter 2117, The Angry Crown Prince. Chapter 2117, The Angry Crown Prince. Feng Wu's question almost made the fairy jump. Hearing the fairy's reply, Feng Wu gradually returned to herself. I didn't fail the trial. The fairy patted her chest. Look, I'm still here, aren't I? Feng Wu stared at the fairy and saw that she hadn't disappeared. She was relieved but not completely. Didn't you say that I had to stay within 10 steps of Jun Linyuan? Otherwise I would fail the trial. The fairy lowered her head and wouldn't look at Feng Wu. Seeing this, Feng Wu knew that something was off, so she said loudly, tell me the truth now. Are you deliberately hiding something from me? Her tone almost scared the fairy, but the fairy felt that it was her fault and didn't dare object. She quickly looked up at Feng Wu before lowering her head. I didn't try to keep it from you, but I forgot to tell you that there's an exception. What exception? Asked Feng Wu. The rules say that you have one chance. Feng Wu stared at her. One chance to do what? The fairy said. You have one chance to stay further than 10 steps from him. Feng Wu asked, only once? Are you sure? The fairy said, yes. Only once. You can see it here. After that, the fairy showed Feng Wu the task log. The first line said 9th trial, and the second line was the footnote, which was written in tiny font. The fairy was right. Feng Wu only had one chance. Feng Wu patted her chest and let out a breath of relief. She almost had a heart attack just then. Feng Wu? Feng Wu. In reality, Feng Wu had fainted. Therefore the fairy urged her, "You need to wake up now. Otherwise your crown prince will be so worried." "What are you talking about? He's not mine," Feng Wu retorted. The fairy gave her a shove. "Yours or not?" Feng Wu was then pushed out by the fairy and didn't hear the remainder of the sentence. The fairy shook her head and smiled wryly. "Haven't you realized? The point of every trial so far has been to try and make you and the crown prince get to know each other better." From the upsy-daisy to the no more than 10 steps apart, the 12 trials of love had been trying to warm things up between the two of them. Otherwise, there would never be any intimate interactions between the two proud teenagers. Unfortunately, Feng Wu still hadn't realized the purpose of the trials. "Feng Wu!" June Linyuan shook her violently. "That hurts!" Feng Wu cried out and sat up. June Linyuan stared at her and let out a breath of relief. He leaned back onto the slope and was too tired to even move a finger. He wanted to scold Feng Wu, but didn't have the energy to do it. Feng Wu realized that she had overreacted, so she scratched her head and said, "Is it because of our body swap? I'm not used to your body yet and can't control your power well. It's too easy to use too much energy." That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.